The Indiana Fever, congratulations, you four. You guys have successfully broken Caitlin Clark. Great job. You guys have tried your damnedest to turn her into a...
We are watching a generational talent being placed in a system that appears completely disconnected from what made her special in the first place. President Amber Cox, General Manager Kelly Krauskopf, Head Coach Stephanie White, and the Indiana Fever leadership group seem committed to a puzzling experiment. Instead of handing the keys to one of the most dynamic point guards basketball has ever seen, they continue trying to fit her into a rigid and traditional structure that limits the very qualities that made her a phenomenon. Yet even that only scratches the surface of the bigger issue. What follows may be far more important than anything we have seen so far.
Rogue, yeah, these networks get exactly what they asked for. They get exactly what they get every penny of what they asked for. But when she doesn't go rogue, when she plays within the system, when she gets subbed out 3 minutes into the game, and then plays for a few minutes, then subbed out again, and then plays for a few minutes, then subbed out again.
When a superstar is removed from the floor barely 3 minutes into the opening quarter, it raises questions far beyond a single substitution. Television partners and broadcasters did not invest in record-breaking interest to watch cautious, restrictive basketball. They invested in the deep shooting range, the daring passes, and the creativity that emerges when she is allowed to dictate the action. Ratings surge when she plays freely and confidently. Yet the current coaching philosophy seems determined to limit that spontaneity, favoring a tightly controlled approach that often leaves her looking frustrated and disconnected while watching from the sideline.
Get rid of those four and you get rid of your stooge of an agent, Aaron Kane, you'll be free. And I know we don't want her to go the LeBron route, but at this point, you need to get rid of Aaron Kane and you need to call Rich Paul immediately.
This brings attention to the larger business structure surrounding the situation. Throughout much of this controversy, her current representation under Aaron Kane has remained noticeably quiet. Compare that approach to an agency with a powerful public presence like Clutch Sports. If someone such as Rich Paul were managing a similar situation, criticism from major outlets would likely be met with a coordinated response. Instead, she appears exposed to both outside criticism and internal restrictions without much visible protection. That reality has become one of the most talked about aspects of the entire discussion.
Y'all need to listen to this real quick.
Let up at all. They're going to stay full. They're going to be disruptive. I think for us, I think we got to get the ball inside to our post players. I think that's one way, or one key to the game that will help us win is to get AB and Mo and.
Looking strictly at the basketball strategy, many of the roster's strengths appear underutilized. The emphasis on repeatedly forcing the ball inside often ignores the spacing and advantages available elsewhere on the floor. Aaliyah Boston is an extremely talented player with a developing offensive game, but she is still working toward complete consistency when finishing through heavy contact near the basket. Meanwhile, players such as Monique Billings see limited opportunities despite their ability to contribute. More importantly, starting possessions through constant post touches can neutralize the team's most dangerous weapon. Modern offenses are built around high pick-and-roll actions that maximize the impact of a player capable of drawing defensive attention far beyond the three-point line.
Stephanie White on why Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark subbed out at the 6:30-minute mark, after which Portland went on a 13-2 run. Well, AB is still on a minutes restriction, so that's why she's coming out, and that's typically around the same time that we've taken Clark out before. None of that is good at all. None of that is good at all. But again, wait. Why are you specifying AB's on a minute restriction, but you're not specifying Caitlin Clark's on a minute restriction? Explain, please. We did it in Golden State because, quite honestly, we didn't want Raven in that environment without another ball handler on the floor, but that's been our...
Simply put, many of the rotation decisions have become increasingly difficult to justify through either analytics or basketball logic. Explaining Aaliyah Boston's minutes through a restriction is one thing, but it does not fully explain removing the team's primary ball handler at nearly the exact same point in multiple games. Comparisons to development models used elsewhere also reveal a philosophy that may be fundamentally flawed. Shielding a franchise cornerstone from difficult situations can actually prevent the growth required to compete for championships. At a certain point, what begins as a basketball discussion becomes something much more personal and significant.
But I'm going to use it anyway. Folks, you mow your lawn. What do you do before you mow your lawn? You start your engine. And what do? You let that engine warm up because it needs to warm up. Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, they're your engines. Got to start that engine, let them warm up. 3.5 minutes isn't enough to let them warm up. They finally get into a rhythm, you get an 8-4 lead, 8-2 lead, and you take them out. Well, now they got to start their engine again. But now we're not starting our engine to begin the game. Now we're starting our engine in the rhythm of a game of momentum we've already lost. This is coaching malpractice.
That is why the current situation has become such a major topic throughout professional sports. The organization was fortunate enough to acquire a player capable of transforming both the competitive and economic future of a franchise. Yet during a critical rebuilding period, she is often being treated more like a supporting piece than the centerpiece. We are witnessing the restraint of a player who helped reshape interest in women's basketball before even playing a professional game. The Indiana Fever's vision appears fundamentally different from the expectations held by much of the basketball world. The developmental philosophy being implemented feels rooted in an older model of team building. It seems built around the belief that rookies must gradually earn authority, veteran hierarchies must remain intact, and offensive systems should take precedence over individual talent. History, however, repeatedly shows that truly transformational players require organizations to adapt around them. When a player possesses the rare ability to alter the geometry of the court, the system should evolve to maximize that advantage rather than suppress it. Exceptional talent often demands structural change, not rigid conformity. The psychological impact of this environment is impossible to ignore. Constant substitutions, unusual off-ball responsibilities, and public suggestions that the team functions better under different circumstances can gradually chip away at a player's natural confidence and aggression. These are not merely small coaching decisions over the course of a long season. They can become powerful signals that affect how an athlete views their role and responsibilities. Reports of efforts aimed at encouraging acceptance of a reduced role only intensify concerns that the focus has shifted toward compliance rather than empowerment. The broader implications stretch beyond one player or one franchise. The league is entering a pivotal financial period marked by expanding television deals, future growth opportunities, and significant business negotiations. Much of that momentum has been driven by an exciting, fast-paced, perimeter-oriented style of basketball that attracts viewers and generates attention. By limiting that style in favor of slower offensive concepts and cautious minute management, critics argue that the organization may be working against the very trends helping drive the sport forward. The timing only increases the pressure. Upcoming matchups against teams such as the Atlanta Dream and the New York Liberty will bring even greater attention and scrutiny. Every coaching decision will be examined closely, especially on larger national stages. If the current rotation patterns continue producing controversy, the spotlight will only intensify. Many believe meaningful change may ultimately need to come from outside the organization. Stronger representation, a different strategic vision, or a shift in leadership philosophy could become part of the conversation. At the same time, the athlete herself faces a defining crossroads. Throughout sports history, many of the most influential competitors were not remembered for quiet acceptance. They were remembered because they embraced the responsibility of reshaping expectations and demanding environments that matched their talent. This feels like one of those defining moments. One path involves continuing to operate within a system many critics believe limits offensive potential. The other involves taking greater ownership of the narrative and pushing for the structural changes necessary to maximize success. Either way, the current version of the experiment appears increasingly difficult to sustain. The question remains whether the system will eventually adapt to the talent, or whether the talent will continue being asked to adapt to the system. Only one of those outcomes seems capable of unlocking the full potential that so many believe still remains untapped.